This is Reframe, the podcast from the College of Education, Health, and Society on the campus of Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. In this episode, we're here with Dean Smith, an exercise science specialist, a senior clinical faculty member, and the latest recipient of the American Chiropractic Association's 2018 Researcher of the Year Award. And alongside his award-winning research, Smith also hosts a podcast called Chiropractic Science, where he discusses new trends and findings with other leading researchers. And today, he's here to talk about his most recent work, some of the most common misconceptions still surrounding chiropractic care, and about some of the untapped potential this field may ultimately hold. So, Dr. Smith, thank you for your time today. Can you begin by telling us a bit about your research and what maybe led to you being the ACA Researcher of the Year?
Yeah, so it's more than just research publications, or it could be more than just that. So that's where I think the podcast plus my research, but I'm guessing it's both. In terms of my research, I'm interested in how people move, basically. And so specifically, I look to see how chiropractic care as well as exercise can influence the way in which we move. So that could be, for example, does exercise promote better speed by which we move? Can a chiropractic treatment also do similar? Can it change the quality of our movements? So those are really just the major kind of questions that I have and that I'm interested in. So that kind of led into the study that I think I got the award for, which came just this past year, essentially. Well, the past 3 or 4 years. It was quite a long study, but it was a study involving the military, and so the Department of Defense put out a call for proposals to ask for any chiropractic group to investigate whether chiropractic could affect special operation forces, military personnel's reaction times and movement times. So what we did in that particular study, we looked at simple reaction times and more complicated reaction times, choice reaction time we would call it. We also had people, I don't know if you've seen these big lighted boards maybe at a gym or something where you hit one panel that lights up and then something else lights up and you try to go as fast as you can.
Yeah, I've seen something similar where you go as fast as you can between the two. Yeah.
So we did something like that, and we had them do 100 button presses, and we looked at how fast they could do them, again, before and then after a series of treatments. And the results essentially showed that particular task was the one that really seemed to show the effect, that people got faster doing this multi-button press, more complicated motor reaction time.
So I'm wondering if you're talking about special forces. So these are people who are already probably in, peak physical condition. So I'm wondering if they're studying and looking at how chiropractic care can even give them an extra edge, like boost them even just a notch or two above and beyond where they're already at physically.
That's exactly it. And the military has a long history of trying to find ways to make them better. And in the early 1900s and middle of 1900s, exercise. There were fatigue labs created at Harvard, for example. How can we push our troops further and further? Mm-hmm. And so you're exactly right. That's my perception of why they put out this call for the proposals to do the study.
And I love the work you're doing with your podcast as well. It's really interesting how you're even bringing this topic to a wider audience. Can you talk about your Chiropractic Science podcast and what led to that?
Yeah, so it's the same reason I got into research in general in chiropractic, and that was when I was first in practice, my first year, I had some interesting cases, and I didn't know how it worked, to be honest with you. Especially things that didn't involve pain. I didn't know how they worked, but people seemed to get better from, their sporting performance improved, their grip strength improved, that sort of thing. The reaction times, people were telling me they were faster, this sort of thing. And so there was, let's say, a lack of literature to suggest how we improved, but patients were saying they improved. It's the same thing for the podcast. So I got into research just because there was a lack of evidence out there. And I got into the podcast for the same reason, because when I look at the public perception and the public information that's out there about chiropractic, I saw a big void. And so I wanted to do, I guess, my part to try to fill some of the void. I realized it wasn't going to be completely filled by any one thing. But if I could just help a little bit, help chiropractors to know that, hey, there's actually some really good research that we have.
I think this might be a good segue from one of the things I wanted to talk about is what are some of the common misconceptions around chiropractic care? Because I know a lot of people, I don't think they know more than what they see on TV. My wife goes to a chiropractor. She says she loves it. Like, it really makes her feel better, a couple days later or whatever. But I think most people's idea of, and mine included, you just, the chiropractor cracks their spine or, does some adjustments to the neck and calls it a day. So what are some of the more common myths or misconceptions around the practice?
Well, I think, there are many. I think one is that perception is that it is dangerous. A lot of people they're kind of scared when they come in. Even when they've decided to come in and made the appointment, there's still a little bit of, I'm not sure what's going to happen. So I think there's a conception that it somehow might hurt or that it's unsafe. The reverse seems to be true, because if you look at the side effects, shall we say, of chiropractic care compared to, let's say, drugs or surgery, we're significantly safer. That's not to say that people won't have some side effects like soreness after an adjustment, but it's the kind of thing that you would expect also if you went to do a workout and you hadn't worked out for a long time. You should expect maybe a little bit of soreness. So those kind of things. The other thing is that I believe people consider chiropractors only when they have pain. But my patients were telling me how much better they could move, how much better their just daily life was. And maybe some of it had to do with pain, but maybe some of it was independent of pain. So I think pain is one aspect, but I think a lot of people don't realize that chiropractors can help beyond pain. So that would be, I think, myth number 2.
So if those are the two biggest misconceptions or myths, what are some of the things that chiropractic care can do that people might not even realize? Like, what are some of the potential applications that are beyond what are some of the common thoughts around the science?
So first of all, let me say, as a researcher, where the bulk of the research is, and then we can go into some speculation. So the bulk of the research literature is on back pain, then neck pain, then headaches. And those are the 3 top reasons why people come to chiropractors. Now, beyond that, what a person might experience, we don't have a ton of data on this, but we have lots of surveys and anecdotes in this field. So people might come in for neck pain and they feel like they can move better in their back or their hips move better. Those are the kinds of things that I see that people describe to me. The evidence base is the strongest, certainly for pain. But we've seen a lot of people who either increase their athletic performance, and we're starting to see some studies in that realm now, but again, they're very few. But if you look at for example, professional teams like NFL, every NFL team has a chiropractor. So it's one of those things where the research is not quite caught up to the practice, and what a lot of people just have come to realize for their own bodies that, hey, this really helps me to function better, not just with pain, But maybe that's a part of it. Maybe it's a way in their lifestyle they can reduce medication use if that's something that they want to do. So I think there are any number of reasons. I have some people come in that say after an adjustment they can see better. So, it's kind of an individualized thing at that point. Chiropractic actually, when it started, it didn't really have anything to do with pain. The very first adjustment that was given by D.D. Palmer was for a janitor who had stooped over some years before and had lost his hearing. And so D.D. Palmer, chiropractic had not been invented yet, but he was the first chiropractor. And he said, well, hey, let me check out your spine. You said you kind of bent forward and you felt a little pop and then you lost your hearing. Okay, so let me check that out there. So we did, and then he used some forces and he put a thrust through there. And as the story goes, he saw this janitor again the next couple of days, and 3 days later, essentially, he could hear again. And so, back in those days in the late 1800s, he was thinking, hey, I'm going to market this as I've got a cure for deafness, which is ridiculous. And it's absolutely ridiculous. But it does kind of go to show that some people will experience effects for which we have difficulty describing. But for that person, it makes a big difference. So again, it could be anything from gastrointestinal issues improving to headaches clearing up to the back pain or neck pain to moving better, all of these kind of things.
It's interesting that so many of the stories do seem to be anecdotal, and there's so many of them, so it has to have some sort of benefits that aren't being researched yet, right? And it's interesting that there's not more of an emphasis on that, because as you mentioned, it's widely, people go to chiropractors all the time, and even major institutions and systems like the military, and you talk about major sports teams like the NFL all have chiropractors on staff. So you think there would be more of a call for research to get to the bottom of what actually is the hard science behind it.
Yeah, amen. That's what we're shooting for. That's what we need to do. So, there just aren't that many chiropractic researchers out there, to be honest with you. Not as many as there are in medicine. I mean, we have 80, I think there are between 70 and 80,000 practicing chiropractors in the United States. We have probably, I'm guessing, 20 to 30 full-time researchers. It's not a lot. Now, there are probably more than that who are part-time contributing, and even more that are just people in practice that are contributing case studies and things. But in terms of solid research programs, we have not many in the country. Now, other countries have booming research. So Canada, as a part of their Canadian Chiropractic Association, they've set up over the last 15 to 20 years that when they get their dues, part of their dues funds research. We haven't done that here in the United States. We really need to, because of what you're saying. I mean, there's a disconnect between what's happening in practice. We're seeing great results in practice, but that hasn't carried over to the research yet. And I think it's for all of these reasons. Probably funding is a big part of it. But then it's just who's going to do it and where is it going to get, how is it going to get done?
If nothing else, I think that certainly means there's a lot of wide open opportunities.
There's a ton of opportunities. And that's why, I could just be busy for 10 lifetimes trying to just answer some of my questions.